The story I'm going to share with you today is a very old tale that has almost been lost to time. There are moments in life that don't announce themselves as important. They arrive silently, disguised as ordinary nights, ordinary sounds, ordinary silence. You don't realize at that moment that everything is about to change. That your understanding of the world is about to unravel and rebuild itself into something much bigger, much deeper, and much more disturbing than anything you ever imagined. This is the story of the night something emerged from the forests of Ohio and chose me. I wasn't looking for answers. I wasn't hunting legends. I was simply living my life in the only home I'd ever known, surrounded by forests that had been there long before I was born. Forests that carried a silence so profound that it sometimes seemed alive. People in the city spoke of those woods in hushed voices, always with uncertainty, always with detachment. They treated the forest as something that listened. I never fully believed them. Not until it appeared. What happened to me wasn't sudden. It started with small things. Subtle things. Footprints where there shouldn't be any. Silence where there should be sound. The feeling of being watched when there was nothing there. At first, I convinced myself it was my imagination. Fear has the power to create things that don't exist. But this was different. This was real. And, deep down, a part of me already knew it. I remember the exact night everything changed. The air was cold and the sky cloudless. That kind of night where every sound travels further than it should. I was alone in my country house, miles away from the nearest neighbor, surrounded only by trees and darkness. That's when I heard the first step outside my window. Slow. Heavy. Deliberate. It wasn't the sound of an animal passing by. It was the sound of something that had stopped. Something that had come there for a reason. At first, I felt fear. Real fear. Because fear is the natural response to the unknown. But what I didn't understand at the time was that fear had never been the purpose of that moment. That presence outside my window hadn't come to hurt me. It had come to find me. To study me. To understand if I was capable of something most humans aren't. Compassion. What followed challenged everything I thought I knew about intelligence, about emotions, and about the hidden lives that exist beyond our own. I encountered something whose existence the world denies. Something powerful. Something ancient. But, more importantly, something capable of inspiring trust. This is not just the story of an encounter. This is the story of a mother. A mother who crossed the border between her world and ours for one reason only. To beg a human to save her family. And what happened after that is something I will carry with me for the rest of my life. I grew up in a quiet rural area in southern Ohio, surrounded by endless forests that seemed older than memory itself. The trees stood tall and patient, like silent witnesses to things people no longer remembered. My name is Eleanor Whitaker, and for most of my life, I believed the woods were simply woods. A place of birds, deer, and wind. But everything changed during the autumn of 1998. I was 32 years old, living alone in my late father's farmhouse. The nights were long there, and the silence felt heavier than it should have been. Sometimes, I would sit on the porch and feel like I was being watched. Not in a threatening way. But in a curious way. Like something was studying me. My father had always warned me to respect the forest. He never explained why. He would just say, some things live there that aren't meant for fear, but for distance. At the time, I thought he was speaking in riddles, or maybe repeating old Appalachian superstition. He had lived his entire life in that land. He knew every trail, every creek, every hidden clearing. Yet there were places even he refused to enter. I remembered asking him once what scared him. He looked at the tree line for a long time before answering. Then he said softly, "Not everything in the forest is an animal." I never forgot that. After he passed away, the property became mine. The farmhouse creaked at night, settling into its age. I tried to continue my life normally. I worked part-time at the local library in town, and spent my evenings tending to the land. The forest began only 50 yards behind the house. It was dense and dark, even during daylight. Sometimes, I would stand at the edge and listen. There was always sound. But sometimes, there was none. And that silence felt unnatural. Too complete. Too aware. The first sign came on a cold October morning. I stepped outside to collect firewood and noticed the chickens were unusually quiet. They weren't moving. They weren't clucking. They stood frozen, staring toward the tree-line. Their bodies were tense. Their heads slightly tilted, like they were listening. I followed their gaze, but saw nothing at first. Just the trees. Just the shadows between them. Yet something felt wrong. The air itself felt heavier. Like something had passed through recently. Later that day, I found footprints. They were behind the woodshed, pressed deep into the soft soil. They were not deer tracks. Not bear tracks. They were shaped like human feet. But far too large. At least 16 inches long. The toes were wide and defined. The depth told me whatever made them was extremely heavy. My hands began to shake as I stood over them. I remember feeling confused more than afraid. Because the tracks didn't approach the house. They circled it. Like something had walked around my home. Observing it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every small sound made my heart jump. The wind against the walls. The settling of the wood. The distant calls of owls. Around midnight, I heard something else. A slow, deliberate step. Outside my bedroom window. Then another. Heavy. Controlled. Not like an animal running. Like something walking carefully. I held my breath and listened. The steps stopped. The silence that followed was unbearable. I wanted to look outside, but I couldn't move. My body refused to obey me. Fear held me still. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time lost meaning in that moment. Then I heard something unexpected. A soft exhale. Close to the glass. Like breath against the cold night air. Not aggressive. Not rushed. Just present. Watching. Waiting. Eventually, I forced myself to sit up. My heart pounded so loudly I thought whatever was outside could hear it. Slowly, I turned my head toward the window. The curtains were thin. The moonlight passed through them easily. And then I saw it. A shadow. Tall. Much taller than any man. The outline was unmistakable. Broad shoulders. A head slightly forward. Completely still. I couldn't see details. Only the shape. But I knew it was looking in. Looking directly at me. And strangely, I didn't feel hate coming from it. I felt curiosity. Deep curiosity. Like it was trying to understand me. Like it had been watching me for some time. My fear began to mix with something else. Something unfamiliar. Something almost like recognition. Then it moved. Slowly. Quietly. The shadow stepped away from the window. Its form disappeared into the darkness beyond the glass. The silence returned, but it felt different now. Charged. Meaningful. I remained frozen for a long time. Trying to process what I had seen. Trying to convince myself it wasn't real. But deep down, I knew it was. The next morning, I ran outside. The ground beneath my window held fresh prints. Larger than the ones from before. Clear. Undeniable. They faced the house. They had stood there. Watching me. Not attacking. Not entering. Just observing. And for reasons I couldn't explain, I felt like it hadn't meant me harm. That was the moment my life began to change. That was the moment I realized something lived in those woods. Something intelligent. Something ancient. Something that had chosen to reveal itself. And I had no idea then that this was only the beginning. That one day she would stand before me in full light and silently beg for my help. For weeks after that night, I lived between disbelief and silent acceptance. Every morning, I would search the ground for signs, and almost every morning, they were there. The footprints appeared and disappeared without pattern. Sometimes near the barn. Sometimes near the tree line. Always watching. Always observing. Never crossing the invisible boundary toward my door. It was as if whatever was out there understood distance. Understood restraint. Understood me. I stopped telling myself it was my imagination. The evidence was too real. Too physical. Too deliberate. I began to notice other things too. Branches bent at unnatural angles. Small piles of stones arranged carefully near the forest edge. Once, I found a cluster of wild berries placed on the wooden fence beside my porch. They hadn't grown there. They had been left there. Offered. My hands trembled when I touched them. Winter came early that year in Ohio. The air grew sharp and unforgiving. Snow covered the ground in a thick white blanket that revealed everything. Nothing could move without leaving its mark. And that was when I saw her clearly for the first time. It was late afternoon, just before sunset. The sky burned orange behind the black silhouettes of the trees. I had stepped outside to bring in firewood when something moved between the trunks. At first, I thought it was a shadow. But shadows don't breathe. Shadows don't shift their weight slowly. Shadows don't watch you back. She stood about 70 yards away, partially hidden. Her body was enormous. Taller than any man I had ever seen. Her form was powerful but calm. Covered in thick dark brown hair that moved gently in the cold wind. Her shoulders were wide, but her posture wasn't aggressive. It was cautious. My breath caught in my throat. Every instinct told me to run. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because her eyes were visible even at that distance. Deep. Dark. Intelligent. They weren't the eyes of an animal. They were aware. They were studying me the same way I studied her. Neither of us moved. Neither of us broke the moment. Time itself felt frozen. She tilted her head slightly. It was such a small gesture, but it carried meaning. Curiosity. Recognition. And something else. Something emotional. Her arms hung naturally at her sides. Her hands were massive, with long fingers that flexed slowly. Not in threat. In uncertainty. Like she wasn't sure what I would do next. Like she was waiting for my decision. I realized then that she had been the one outside my window. The one who walked around my house. The one who left the berries. She wasn't hunting me. She wasn't stalking me. She had been watching me. Learning me. Understanding me. And somehow, I knew she recognized me as an individual. Not prey. Not danger. Something else. The cold air burned my lungs as I stood there, unable to look away. I noticed details others would never believe. Her face was not monstrous. It was powerful, yes. Strong jaw. Wide cheekbones. But her expression held something gentle. Something deeply emotional. Her chest rose and fell slowly with each breath. She was calm. Completely calm. Then something happened I will never forget. She took one step forward. Just one. Slow. Careful. Intentional. My heart pounded so violently I could hear it in my ears. But she stopped immediately. She didn't approach further. She wasn't forcing the distance closed. She was respecting it. Giving me control. I don't know what came over me in that moment. But I did something that changed everything. I didn't run. I didn't scream. I simply lowered my head slightly. Not in submission. In acknowledgement. And when I lifted my eyes again, she was still there. Watching. Understanding. We remained like that for what felt like forever. Two beings from different worlds. Connected by silence. Connected by something deeper than language. Then, slowly, she stepped backward. One step. Then another. Her form blending into the trees. Until she was gone completely. But the feeling she left behind stayed. That night, I didn't feel fear. I felt something else. Something impossible to explain. A connection had been formed. And deep inside, I knew this was not the end. She had shown herself for a reason. She had chosen me. And I had a feeling that soon, she would need me. And if you think this is where the mystery ends, it doesn't. What she did next would change everything I believed about life, about intelligence, and about the hidden families living in the forests of Ohio. So stay with me, because what happened next was not just an encounter, it was a silent plea for help. And once you hear it, you may never see the forest the same way again. After that day, the forest no longer felt like an empty place. It felt inhabited. Aware. Watching with purpose. Every morning when I stepped outside, I carried a quiet expectation in my chest. Not fear. Not entirely. Something closer to anticipation. The snow still covered everything, and every sound carried farther in the frozen air. The land had become a canvas of truth. Nothing could hide its movement anymore. The footprints continued to appear. Larger ones. Clearer ones. Sometimes only one set. Sometimes two. That was the first detail that unsettled me deeply. Two sets meant she was not alone. At first, I tried to convince myself it was overlapping prints. But I knew better. These were separate. Different sizes. Different stride lengths. Different weight. My hands would grow cold even inside my gloves when I followed them with my eyes. Days passed, and I began to feel her presence even when I couldn't see her. It's difficult to explain. It was like an invisible thread connecting us. Sometimes, while carrying firewood, I would suddenly feel the urge to look toward the tree line. And there she would be. Standing partially hidden. Watching silently. Always at a distance. Always calm. Never threatening. Her movements were incredibly controlled. She never rushed. Never panicked. She moved with patience that felt ancient. Her body blended with the forest effortlessly. If she didn't want to be seen, she wasn't. That fact alone terrified and comforted me at the same time. Because if she had wanted to harm me, she could have done so easily. But she hadn't. She never had. One afternoon, I noticed something new. Smaller prints beside hers. Much smaller. My heart began to race as I crouched beside them. They were shaped the same way. Wide toes. Deep impression. But shorter. Lighter. My fingers hovered above them, trembling. She wasn't alone. She had family. She had children. That realization changed everything inside me. She wasn't just a solitary being wandering the woods. She was a mother. Protecting something. Caring for something. Living a life hidden from ours. A life we were never meant to see. Suddenly, her caution made sense. Her watchfulness. Her restraint. That evening, as the sun disappeared behind the trees, I saw her again. Closer than ever before. Only about 40 yards away. My breath caught immediately. Her massive form stood between two thick tree trunks. But this time, she wasn't alone. Behind her leg, partially hidden, something smaller moved. A small figure. Watching me carefully. I froze. My heart pounded with a mixture of awe and disbelief. The smaller one clung to her leg, peeking around her cautiously. Its eyes reflected the fading light. It was afraid. Curious. Protective. Just like any child would be. She shifted slightly, placing herself more firmly between me and the smaller one. Shielding it. In that moment, I understood her completely. She wasn't watching me out of curiosity alone. She was evaluating me. Measuring my intentions. Determining whether I was a threat to her family. And somehow, she had decided I wasn't. Because she didn't run. She didn't hide. She remained there. Slowly, she turned her head toward the smaller one. Then back toward me. It was a deliberate movement. Meaningful. Like she was showing me something. Trusting me with the knowledge of their existence. My chest tightened with emotion I didn't expect. I felt honored. Chosen. Trusted. The smaller one stepped forward slightly. Its movements were cautious but curious. It studied me the same way she had. With awareness. With intelligence. It wasn't behaving like an animal. It was behaving like a thinking being. A feeling being. And I realized then that I was witnessing something very few humans ever had. Then she did something that would stay with me forever. She placed her hand gently on the smaller one's shoulder. Protective. Loving. Reassuring. It was the gesture of a mother. Universal. Recognizable across all species. In that moment, she wasn't a mystery. She was simply a mother protecting her child. She looked at me one last time before slowly guiding the smaller one back into the forest. Her eyes held something deeper now. Not just curiosity. Not just caution. There was intention there. A message forming. And deep in my soul, I felt it clearly. Soon, she would approach me. Not as an observer. But as someone who needed something only I could give. The days that followed felt heavier, filled with a quiet tension I could not escape. Every sound from the forest carried meaning now. Every broken branch, every distant movement. I began to sense patterns in her behavior. She appeared more frequently. She stayed longer. The distance between us slowly decreased. It wasn't random. It was intentional. She was building something. Trust. I stopped pretending this was coincidence. This was interaction. Silent, careful interaction. I began leaving small offerings near the edge of the tree line. Apples. Corn. Fresh water in a metal basin. I didn't know if she would accept them, but it felt right. It felt respectful. It felt necessary. The next morning, the apples were gone. The basin was empty. And beside it, her footprints remained. That moment sent a chill through my entire body. Not from fear, but from realization. She understood what I was doing. She accepted it. She responded to it. This was no longer observation. This was communication. Primitive, silent, but unmistakable. We were acknowledging each other. One late afternoon, as the sun sank low and painted the forest in gold, I felt her presence again. But this time, it was different. Closer. Much closer. My body sensed her before my eyes found her. When I turned toward the tree line, she was already there. Only 20 yards away. My breath stopped instantly. Her full form stood exposed in the open. She was enormous. Nearly 8 feet tall. Her body was covered in thick, dark brown hair that reflected the fading sunlight. Her shoulders were broad, but her posture was calm. Her chest rose slowly with each controlled breath. Her arms hung relaxed at her sides. She wasn't showing dominance. She wasn't showing fear. Her eyes locked onto mine. And in them, I saw something undeniable. Intelligence. Awareness. Emotion. She wasn't looking at me like prey. She was looking at me like another being. Another mind. Another presence she recognized. I could feel my heart beating violently in my chest, but I didn't move. Then she did something that made my entire body freeze. She stepped forward. Slowly. Carefully. Closing the distance between us. Every movement was deliberate. Controlled. She stopped only 15 yards away. Close enough that I could see every detail of her face. The texture of her skin beneath the hair. The depth in her eyes. Her face was not what people would expect. It wasn't grotesque. It wasn't monstrous. It was powerful. Ancient. Her brow was heavy, but her expression held softness. Her eyes were dark and deep, filled with emotion that felt almost human. I could see understanding there. Thought. Feeling. My hands trembled at my sides. My mind screamed at me to run. But something deeper held me still. Something told me she didn't mean harm. She had never meant harm. She raised her head slightly, inhaling the air slowly. Studying my scent. Learning me. Then she lifted her arm. My breath caught violently as her massive hand rose slowly into view. Her fingers extended slightly. Not in threat. In gesture. In offering. It was the most human movement I had ever seen from her. She wasn't reaching to grab me. She was reaching to show me something. Her arm moved downward gently, pointing toward the forest behind her. Then she looked back at me. Then back toward the forest. Then at me again. It was clear. Intentional. She was asking me to follow. A deep, primal fear surged through my body. Every instinct told me this was dangerous. Unknown. Irreversible. But beneath that fear was something stronger. Trust. She had never harmed me. Never threatened me. She had only watched. Only learned. Only waited. Her eyes held urgency now. Something had changed. Something was wrong. She lowered her arm slowly, but her gaze never left mine. She wasn't forcing me. She was asking. Waiting for my decision. And deep down, I knew. She didn't come to show herself. She came because she needed help. And what I would discover beyond that tree line would bind my life to hers forever. My legs felt weak as I stood there, staring at her outstretched arm. Every part of my human instinct told me to stay where I was. To remain inside the safety of what I knew. But something deeper, something beyond logic, told me she was not inviting me into danger. She was inviting me into truth. Her eyes held no aggression. Only urgency. Only need. She took one slow step backward toward the forest. Then she stopped. Waiting. Her massive frame remained visible between the trees, her dark form blending with the shadows. She didn't disappear completely. She wanted to make sure I could still see her. That I could still follow. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it echo inside my skull. I took one step forward. The sound of my boot crunching the frozen ground felt unnaturally loud. She didn't react with fear. She didn't retreat further. She simply watched me. Her posture relaxed slightly, as if my decision confirmed something for her. I took another step. Then another. Slowly, cautiously, I moved toward the tree line. The air changed as soon as I crossed into the forest. It felt colder. Heavier. The silence inside was deeper than anything outside. Even the wind seemed afraid to move there. She moved ahead of me now, but slowly, making sure I could keep up. Her movements were incredibly quiet for something so large. Each step was careful and precise. I followed her deeper than I had ever gone before. Past trees older than memory. Past fallen logs covered in thick moss. Past places where sunlight barely reached the ground. My fear was still there, but it was no longer controlling me. Curiosity had taken its place. Trust had taken its place. After several minutes, she stopped. She stood beside a large fallen tree. Her body turned slightly toward me, then toward the ground. She looked down, then back at me. Her breathing was heavier now. Not aggressive. Emotional. Urgent. I moved closer slowly, my eyes scanning the ground. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. Then my stomach dropped. There was another one. Smaller. Much smaller. Its body lay partially curled against the base of the fallen tree. Its dark hair was thinner. Its frame fragile compared to hers. It wasn't moving. My chest tightened instantly with dread. Fear and sadness collided inside me at once. She let out a low sound. It wasn't a growl. It wasn't a threat. It was something else. A sound of pain. A sound of pleading. She stepped back slightly, giving me space. Her massive hand hovered near the smaller body but did not touch it. She was afraid. Afraid to make it worse. Afraid of losing it. Her eyes moved between me and the small one repeatedly. She wasn't showing me this by accident. She was asking me. Begging me. Help my family. In that moment, all fear disappeared. She wasn't a mystery anymore. She wasn't a legend. She was a mother trying to save her child. And somehow, she believed I was the only one who could help. My breath became shallow as I slowly approached the small body lying near the fallen tree. Every movement I made felt fragile, like the entire moment could shatter if I moved too fast. She watched me closely, her massive form still intense behind me. I could feel her fear, not as a threat, but as a desperate hope balanced on the edge of loss. The smaller one's chest moved faintly, barely visible beneath the dark hair. It was alive. Weak, but alive. I knelt carefully beside it, my hands trembling uncontrollably. I had never been this close to one of them before. The detail was overwhelming. The texture of its hair was thick but soft. Its arm was thinner, fragile compared to hers. Its fingers curled slightly, twitching with faint life. I could hear its breathing now. Slow. Strained. Each breath sounded like effort. She moved slightly behind me, and I froze for a moment. But when I turned my head, her posture remained calm. She wasn't stopping me. She was allowing me. Trusting me. Her eyes never left my hands. She was watching everything I did, measuring every motion. Not as a predator. As a mother watching someone touch her child. I leaned closer, trying to understand what was wrong. Then I saw it. A deep wound along its side. The hair around it was dark and wet. Blood had dried in patches against its skin. The injury looked fresh. Painful. Dangerous. My heart sank immediately. This wasn't something that would heal on its own. It needed care. Real care. My mind raced through everything I knew. I wasn't a doctor. I wasn't trained for this. But I had supplies at the house. Bandages. Antiseptic. Basic tools. I looked up at her slowly, my voice barely above a whisper. I can help. I didn't know if she understood the words, but she understood the intent. I saw it in her eyes instantly. A shift. A fragile spark of hope. She stepped aside, clearing the path behind me. She wasn't blocking my exit. She was allowing me to leave. Allowing me to return. Trusting that I would. That trust hit me harder than fear ever could. She was placing her child's life in my hands. A human. The same kind that had likely brought harm to them before. I stood carefully and began walking back toward the house. Every step felt heavier than the last. I kept expecting to wake up. To find this was a dream. But the cold air, the silence, the weight in my chest reminded me this was real. Completely real. When I reached the edge of the forest, I turned back. She was still there. watching me, waiting. I ran the rest of the way to the house, my hands shaking as I gathered supplies. Clean cloth, bandages, antiseptic solution, water. My mind moved faster than my body could keep up. Fear tried to creep in, but something stronger pushed it away. Purpose. I wasn't thinking about what they were anymore. I was thinking about saving a life. When I returned to the forest, she appeared again almost instantly. Like she had been waiting at the edge the entire time. She didn't approach me aggressively. She simply turned and began walking deeper into the trees, leading me back, trusting me completely now. When we reached the fallen tree again, the smaller one was still breathing, still fighting. I knelt beside it once more, my hands steadier now. She stood close behind me, so close I could feel the warmth of her body in the cold air. She wasn't just watching anymore. She was hoping. And in that moment, I realized something that would stay with me forever. This wasn't just an encounter. This was a bond. A silent agreement between two worlds. And what happened next would change both of our lives in ways neither of us could have imagined. My hands trembled as I opened the small medical kit beside the injured young one. The forest felt impossibly silent around us, as if everything living there understood the importance of this moment. I poured a small amount of water onto a clean cloth and hesitated briefly before touching its wound. Its body flinched slightly at the contact, and my heart immediately tightened. It was conscious enough to feel pain. Conscious enough to fight for life. Behind me, she let out a low, controlled sound. It wasn't anger. It was fear. I turned my head slightly, and our eyes met. Her gaze was intense but steady. She wasn't warning me to stop. She was asking me to continue. Asking me to help her child survive. That trust strengthened my resolve in a way nothing else could. I began cleaning the wound slowly, carefully removing dried blood and debris. Each movement was deliberate. Each second stretched endlessly. The young one's breathing became uneven at times, but it did not resist me. It seemed to sense I wasn't there to harm it. Its small fingers moved faintly, curling and uncurling against the cold earth. She moved closer then. So close I could hear her breathing clearly. Slow. Deep. Controlled. Her massive presence towered above me, but she never interfered. She never touched me. She simply watched, her entire being focused on her child. I realized then that she was restraining her instincts with incredible discipline. Allowing a human to do something no human had likely ever done before. I applied antiseptic carefully, knowing the pain it would cause. The young one's body tensed, and a faint sound escaped its throat. Not a growl. Not a threat. A sound of pain. She responded instantly with a low, soothing tone. It was gentle. Comforting. The same sound any mother would make to calm her injured child. The young one relaxed slightly after hearing it. That moment broke something open inside me. I wasn't afraid anymore. Not truly. I was witnessing love. Real, undeniable love. It didn't matter what she was. It didn't matter what humans called her kind. She was a mother. Protecting her child. Hoping. Trusting. Feeling. I wrapped the wound carefully with clean cloth, securing it as gently as possible. My fingers brushed against its skin occasionally, and each time I expected a reaction. But there was none. Only breathing. Only fragile life continuing forward. When I finished, I sat back slowly, unsure of what would happen next. She stepped forward then. My body froze instantly, but I didn't move away. She lowered herself slightly, her massive frame moving with surprising grace. Her eyes examined the bandage carefully. Her nostrils flared slightly as she studied the scent of what I had done. Her hand hovered above the young one, hesitating. Then she touched it. Her fingers moved with incredible gentleness. Careful. Protective. Loving. She understood that something had changed. That something had been done to help. Her eyes lifted slowly toward me again. And in them, I saw something I will never forget. Gratitude. Not confusion. Not suspicion. Gratitude. She held my gaze for several seconds, and in that silence, there was understanding between us. No words. No sounds. Just recognition. She knew I had helped her child. She knew I had chosen compassion instead of fear. The young one's breathing grew slightly stronger. Still weak, but stronger. Life was still there. Still fighting. She let out a slow breath, and her entire body seemed to release tension she had been holding for longer than I could imagine. She didn't reach for me. She didn't threaten me. She simply stayed there beside her child, watching over it, while allowing me to remain beside them. And in that moment, deep inside the forests of Ohio, something impossible had happened. Trust had been born between human and something the world refused to believe existed. I stayed there beside them longer than I realized, watching the slow rise and fall of the young one's chest. Each breath felt like a small victory against something unseen and merciless. The cold air moved gently through the trees, carrying with it the quiet rhythm of survival. She remained close, her massive body positioned protectively beside the injured one, her eyes shifting between its fragile form and my face. There was no hostility in her gaze now. Only awareness. Only trust. As the minutes passed, the young one moved slightly. Its fingers twitched again, stronger this time. Its head shifted faintly against the ground. My heart surged with relief I hadn't expected to feel so deeply. I looked up at her, and she had already noticed. Her entire posture changed in subtle ways. Her shoulders relaxed slightly. Her breathing slowed. She had seen it too. She knew her child was still fighting. She lowered herself carefully to the ground beside it, her massive arm resting gently near its body without touching the bandage. Her movements were incredibly controlled, like she understood how fragile this moment was. Her head lowered slightly, her eyes never leaving her child. I could see emotion there. Not animal instinct. Emotion. Concern. Love. I realized then how long she must have been trying to help it alone. How helpless she must have felt. Watching something she loved suffer without understanding how to stop it. The thought of that pain filled my chest with an ache that went beyond fear or disbelief. She had come to me because she had no other choice. Because somewhere along the way, she had decided I was different. The forest remained silent around us, but it no longer felt cold or empty. It felt alive. A hidden world existing beside ours, unseen but real. I became aware of other subtle movements deeper in the trees. Shapes shifting behind thick trunks. Watching. Waiting. They were there. Others. Her family. Observing from a distance. Trusting her judgment. I didn't turn toward them fully, but I felt their presence clearly. They weren't approaching. They weren't threatening. They were witnessing. Witnessing the human their mother had trusted. Witnessing the fragile line between fear and compassion. The realization humbled me completely. I wasn't just helping one life. I was standing inside their world. She lifted her head slowly and looked at me again. Her eyes held something new now. Not desperation. Not fear. Something calmer. Something deeper. Recognition. She understood that I had done everything I could in that moment. That I had chosen to help instead of harm. That I had seen her not as a monster, but as a mother. Carefully, she extended her arm toward the young one and gently lifted its upper body slightly, supporting it. The young one responded faintly, its head tilting toward her. It recognized her presence. It trusted her completely. She made a low, soothing sound, the same gentle tone I had heard before. It wasn't loud, but it carried comfort. Then she did something I never expected. She looked directly at me, and slowly, deliberately, she lowered her head. It was not submission. It was acknowledgement. It was gratitude expressed in the only way she could. My throat tightened as emotion rose unexpectedly inside me. I lowered my own head slightly in return, mirroring her gesture without thinking. In that silent exchange, something passed between us that words could never carry. Respect. Trust. Understanding. She began guiding the young one carefully, encouraging it to move. It struggled at first, but it was stronger now. Strong enough to try. Strong enough to live. She stayed close, supporting it without forcing it. Her patience was endless. Her love was unmistakable. Before disappearing fully into the forest, she stopped one last time. She turned her head. She looked at me. And in her eyes, I saw something I would carry with me for the rest of my life. She would never forget me. And I knew, without question, that neither would I forget her. After that night, the forest felt different in a way I could never fully explain. It no longer felt like something separate from my life. It felt connected to me. Like an invisible thread now existed between my home and whatever world they lived in beyond the trees. I would stand on my porch for hours sometimes, staring into the tree line, wondering how the young one was doing. Wondering if it had survived. Wondering if she remembered me. Days passed without any sign of them. No footprints. No movement. No silent watching presence. The snow slowly melted, revealing the cold earth beneath. Part of me feared the worst. Feared that I had failed. Feared that despite everything, it hadn't been enough. The silence became heavy with uncertainty. But then, one morning, I saw it. Footprints. Fresh ones. Near the edge of the tree line. My heart began to pound instantly as I rushed closer. They were hers. I recognized their size. Their shape. Their depth. But beside them were smaller prints too. Stronger than before. Deeper than before. Steadier. My chest tightened with overwhelming relief. The young one had survived. I stood there staring at those prints longer than I realized, my eyes filling with tears. Something I had never expected to feel for something I had once feared. I wasn't looking at tracks anymore. I was looking at proof of life. Proof of recovery. Proof that what we had done together had mattered. That evening, as the sun disappeared beyond the trees, I felt it again. That familiar sensation. That quiet awareness of being watched. But this time, it didn't carry tension. It carried calm. I looked toward the forest slowly. She was there. Standing between the trees. Closer than ever before. And beside her stood the young one. Alive. Standing on its own. My breath caught as emotion flooded through me. It was thinner than before, but stronger. Its posture was more stable. Its breathing calm. It leaned slightly against her leg, but it was standing. It had survived. She had brought it back. She had brought it to show me. She stepped forward slowly, stopping at the edge of the tree line. The young one remained close beside her. Neither of them showed fear. Neither of them showed aggression. Only presence. Only awareness. She looked at me, and I saw it clearly. Gratitude. Not the desperate gratitude of before. But something deeper. Lasting gratitude. She wanted me to see. She wanted me to know. You saved my child. The young one looked at me too, its dark eyes filled with curiosity instead of fear now. It remembered me. Somehow, it remembered that I had helped. It did not hide. It did not retreat. It stood there, breathing calmly in the fading light. She made that same low, gentle sound again. Softer this time. Peaceful. It was not a warning. It was communication. A sound of acknowledgement. A sound of closure. Then something incredible happened. The young one stepped forward slightly. Not far. Just one small step. But it was enough. It was the first time one of them had ever approached me willingly. She did not stop it. She allowed it. She trusted me completely now. In that moment, I understood something most people never would. Fear had never defined this connection. Trust had. And that trust had changed everything. The young one's small step toward me felt larger than anything I had ever witnessed. It wasn't just movement. It was trust made visible. My body remained completely still, afraid that even the smallest motion might break the fragile moment. Its dark eyes studied me carefully, filled with curiosity that no longer carried fear. Behind it, she stood calm and watchful, allowing the moment to unfold naturally. She was not controlling it. She was allowing it to choose. The cold air moved gently between us, carrying the quiet weight of something profound. I could see the young one's chest rise and fall steadily now. Its strength had returned. Not completely, but enough. Enough to stand. Enough to live. Enough to remember. It tilted its head slightly, studying my face the same way she had done so many times before. Learning me. Understanding me. I slowly lowered myself to one knee, not to approach, but to make myself smaller. Less threatening. Less imposing. I wanted it to understand I meant no harm. My movements were slow and deliberate. She watched every motion carefully, but she did not intervene. Her trust in me was absolute now, and that realization carried a responsibility I could feel deep in my bones. The young one didn't retreat. It remained there, watching. Its fingers flexed slowly at its sides. Its breathing calm and steady. It was no longer fighting for life. It was living. Fully present in the moment. And somehow, it knew I had been part of that survival. She stepped forward then, closing the distance slightly. Not aggressively. Not protectively. But with intention. Her massive form stood only 15 yards away now. Close enough that I could see every detail of her face clearly. The intelligence in her eyes was undeniable. She wasn't simply reacting to instinct. She was choosing her actions. Choosing trust. She looked at the young one, then back at me. Her expression remained calm, but there was something deeper there now. Something permanent. Something that would not fade with time. She understood that this moment mattered. That this connection mattered. That something rare had been formed between us. The young one slowly stepped back toward her, leaning gently against her leg. It felt safe there. Protected. Whole. She lowered her hand carefully, resting it lightly against its shoulder. The gesture was gentle. Loving. Reassuring. She had not lost it. She had not failed. And somehow, she knew I had helped make that possible. For several long seconds, none of us moved. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath. Even the wind felt distant. Time lost meaning in the presence of something so pure. Something so real. Two worlds standing face to face without fear. Without violence. Without misunderstanding. Then she did something that would stay with me forever. She raised her head slightly and looked directly into my eyes. Not as an animal. Not as something wild. But as something aware. Something intelligent. Something capable of memory. She was saying goodbye. Not forever. But for now. She turned slowly, guiding the young one beside her. Together, they began walking back into the forest. Their movements were calm and unhurried. She did not look back immediately. She trusted that I would remain where I was. That I would respect the boundary between our worlds. Just before the trees fully hid her from view, she stopped. She turned her head. And looked at me one last time. That look carried everything. Gratitude. Recognition. Connection. Then she disappeared into the forest, leaving me standing alone beneath the fading Ohio sky, forever changed by something the world would never believe. Life never returned to what it had been before that winter. Even when the forest stood quiet and still, I knew it was no longer empty. Every morning when I stepped onto the porch, I felt that invisible presence beyond the tree line. Not watching in suspicion. Watching in awareness. Watching in memory. I had crossed a boundary few humans ever had, and there was no returning to ignorance after that. Weeks passed, and I didn't see her again. The snow had melted completely now, replaced by damp earth and the first signs of early spring. Birds returned. The winds softened. The forest began to breathe again. Yet the silence she left behind was different. It wasn't absence. It was distance. Intentional distance. Respectful distance. Sometimes, I would walk near the edge of the trees, never entering too far. I didn't want to break the unspoken understanding between us. I would simply stand there, listening. Feeling. Remembering. Wondering if she was nearby. Wondering if she still watched from places I could not see. Deep down, I knew she did. One morning, I found something that made my heart stop. A small arrangement of stones rested beside the wooden fence near my porch. They had not been there the night before. They were placed carefully, deliberately. Not random. Not natural. An intentional act. My chest tightened as I knelt beside them. This was not coincidence. This was communication. Beside the stones lay something else. A single wildflower. Fresh. Recently picked. It did not grow near the house. It grew deeper in the forest. Somewhere she had gone herself. Somewhere she had chosen it. Somewhere she had carried it from. She had brought it here. Left it here. For me. My hands trembled as I picked it up carefully. The petals were soft and fragile. Real. Undeniable. This was her way of speaking. Her way of remembering. Her way of saying she had not forgotten what I had done. I looked toward the tree line instinctively, my heart racing with quiet hope. The trees stood still. Silent. Watching. Hiding their secrets as they always had. But now I understood. Silence did not mean absence. Silence meant protection. She was still there. Still living. Still raising her family. Still remembering the human she had trusted. Days later, I found more signs. Footprints at the edge of the property. Larger ones beside smaller ones. Strong. Healthy. Alive. They never approached the house too closely. She respected the boundary she had chosen. The boundary that allowed both of us to exist safely in our separate worlds. I never told anyone the truth. I never spoke of what I had seen. Not because I was afraid of being called a liar. But because I knew what humans would do if they believed it. They would search. They would hunt. They would destroy what they did not understand. And I could never allow that. This was not my secret to expose. This was her life. Her family. Her world. Sometimes, late at night, I would sit on the porch and stare into the darkness beyond the trees. And every now and then, just for a brief moment, I would see movement. A tall shape between the trunks. Still. Watching. Not threatening. Not hiding. Simply present. She was never truly gone. And she never would be. Years passed, but the memory of that winter never faded. It remained as clear in my mind as if it had happened yesterday. Life continued around me in ordinary ways. Seasons changed. Snow fell and melted. Leaves turned gold and returned to green. But beneath that normal rhythm, something extraordinary remained quietly alive in my world. Something hidden just beyond human reach. I grew older, and so did the land around me. The farmhouse creaked more with each passing year, but it still stood strong. Just like the forest behind it. That forest was no longer something I feared. It had become something sacred to me. A place that held truth few would ever understand. A place where trust had once crossed the impossible boundary between species. Sometimes, I would still find footprints. Larger ones. Smaller ones. Newer ones. Proof that her family continued to survive. Continued to grow. Continued to exist in the shadows of a world that refused to believe in them. Every time I saw them, a quiet warmth filled my chest. She had succeeded. Her child had lived. One evening, many years later, as the sun disappeared behind the trees, I saw her again. She stood at the edge of the tree line, just as she had long ago. Her body was older now. The movement of her shoulders slower. The strength still there, but softened by time. Her dark hair showed subtle signs of age. But her eyes were the same. Deep. Intelligent. Unforgettable. My breath caught in my throat as emotion overwhelmed me. I had wondered if I would ever see her again. If she still lived. If she still remembered. And now, standing there in the fading light, I knew the answer. She remembered. She did not approach. She did not need to. We simply stood there, looking at each other across the distance. Two lives forever connected by one moment of compassion. Behind her, I noticed movement. The young one. No longer small. No longer fragile. Fully grown now. Standing beside her. Alive because of a decision made long ago. It watched me with the same calm awareness she had once shown. It understood. Somehow, it understood everything. It knew I had been part of its survival. Part of its story. She looked at me for a long moment. Longer than ever before. Her chest rose slowly with each breath. The air between us carried memory, gratitude, and something deeper than either of those. Then she lowered her head slightly. The same gesture she had made years ago. Acknowledgement. Respect. Gratitude. I felt tears form in my eyes as I returned the gesture, lowering my head in silence. Words had never been necessary between us. They never would be. She turned slowly then, her massive form moving with quiet dignity. The younger one followed beside her. Together, they walked back into the forest that had always been their home. They did not look back. They didn't need to. Because both of us already knew what existed between us would never disappear. And as the darkness settled over the forests of Ohio, I stood there alone, carrying a truth that had changed my life forever. After that final encounter, something inside me settled in a way I had never experienced before. There was no longer uncertainty. No longer wondering. I knew she was real. I knew her family lived and continued somewhere beyond the limits of my sight. And more importantly, I knew she had trusted me when she had every reason not to. That truth became something I carried quietly, like a sacred responsibility. I stopped searching for signs as often. Not because I stopped caring, but because I understood something deeper now. She would appear only when she chose to. Not when I wanted. Not when I hoped. Our connection had never been about control. It had always been about mutual respect. She owed me nothing. And yet, she had given me something priceless. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, I would still sit on the porch and listen. The forest had its own voice. Its own rhythm. Most people never noticed it. But once you truly heard it, you could never forget it. I would hear branches shift. Leaves move. Soft sounds too deliberate to be wind alone. I never felt fear during those moments. Only calm. There were nights when I felt her presence strongly, even without seeing her. It was not imagination. It was awareness. The same awareness she had once used to study me. I realized then that she had likely watched me far longer than I had known. Long before that first night at my window. Long before I ever understood she existed. I often wondered why she had chosen me. There had been other humans. Other homes. other opportunities. But she had come to me, trusted me, allowed me to see her world. I believe now it was never random. She had been observing me, learning my behavior, understanding that I was not a threat, that I was capable of compassion. The land itself had shaped that trust. My father had lived there peacefully his entire life. He had respected the forest, never taken more than he needed, never destroyed what did not belong to him. Perhaps she had watched him too. Perhaps she had learned from him that some humans were different, that some humans could be trusted. Years turned into decades, but I never lost that connection. Even when I no longer saw footprints, I knew they were still there, moving through the same forests, raising new generations, teaching them survival, teaching them caution, teaching them that humans were dangerous, but not all humans. The world around me changed. More roads were built, more trees were cut, more noise filled the silence that once defined this land. Yet somehow, they endured. They adapted. They remained hidden. Their intelligence allowed them to survive where others would have vanished. Their restraint allowed them to remain unseen. I never told anyone the full truth while I was younger. People would have doubted me, mocked me, or worse, believed me. The leaf would have brought hunters, cameras, violence, curiosity without respect. I could never risk their safety for the sake of being believed. This was never about proving anything. It was about protecting something sacred. Protecting something that had once trusted me with its most vulnerable moment. Even now, as I grew older and my body weakened with time, that memory remained the strongest part of me. Stronger than fear. Stronger than doubt. Stronger than the passing of years. Because I knew something most people never would. They were real. They felt. They loved. And they remembered. Now, as I sit on the same wooden porch where this journey began so many years ago, I can feel time catching up with me. My hands are older. My hair has turned gray. The farmhouse creaks louder in the wind than it once did. But the forest behind my home remains the same. Silent. Patient. Watching. Waiting. It has outlived generations of humans, and it will outlive me too. Most people spend their entire lives believing they understand the world around them. They believe the unknown is empty, that what cannot be seen cannot exist. I used to believe that too. Until the night she stood outside my window. Until the moment she trusted me with something more valuable than her own safety. Her child. I never asked for proof. I never needed proof. The memory lives inside me more clearly than anything else in my life. I can still see her eyes. Still feel the weight of her trust. Still hear the quiet sound of her breathing in the cold Ohio air. Some truths are not meant to be shared loudly. Some truths are meant to be protected. I often wonder if she still lives. If somewhere, deep in the untouched parts of this forest, she still walks beneath the same sky. If the child I helped save has now become a mother itself. If new generations move silently through the trees, carrying the memory of the human who once helped them. I believe they do. Sometimes, late at night, when the world is completely still, I feel it again. That same quiet awareness. That same invisible presence just beyond sight. I no longer try to see it clearly. I no longer need to. Some connections do not require sight. They exist beyond the physical world. They exist in memory. In trust. I never told the world my story because the world does not deserve to know them. The world destroys what it cannot control. Humans fear what they cannot dominate. But they were never meant to belong to our world. They belong to the forest. To the silence. To the ancient rhythm that existed long before we arrived. She taught me something that winter that no human ever had. She taught me that intelligence does not belong only to us. She taught me that love exists beyond species. She taught me that trust, once given, is the most powerful force in existence. And most importantly, she taught me that sometimes, the most incredible truths are not meant to be proven. They are meant to be experienced. The forest remains behind my home, just as it always has. The trees still stand tall, guarding their secrets. And every now and then, when the light fades and the wind falls silent, I still look toward the tree-line. Not because I expect to see her again, but because I know she was real. And somewhere, deep within those forests of Ohio, a family lives on. A family that once trusted a human. A family that once begged for help. And a human who will carry their memory for the rest of her life. There is something I have come to understand after carrying this secret for most of my life. The world is far larger than what we allow ourselves to see. We walk through forests believing we are alone, believing we are the only ones capable of thought, of emotion, of love. But that winter taught me otherwise. It taught me that intelligence can exist in silence. That compassion can exist without words. That trust can exist between beings who were never meant to meet. I was never special. I was never chosen because I was stronger, or smarter, or braver than anyone else. I was chosen because, somehow, she saw something in me that humans often forget to show each other. Compassion. Patience. Restraint. She saw that I would not harm her. She saw that I would help when help was needed. And because of that, her family lived. I still think about the moment she first stood outside my window. The moment our worlds touched for the first time. I remember the fear, yes, but more than that, I remember the understanding that followed. Fear fades. But understanding stays. Understanding changes you. It reshapes how you see everything. Many people search their entire lives for something extraordinary. They look to the sky, to the stars, to distant places. But sometimes, the most extraordinary things exist quietly beside us. Hidden. Watching. Waiting. Not because they fear us, but because they understand us better than we understand ourselves. She never spoke to me. Not with words. But she never needed to. Her eyes told me everything. Her actions told me everything. The moment she trusted me with her injured child was the moment I realized that trust is the purest form of communication that exists. It requires no language. Only intention. I protected her secret then, and I protect it now. Not because I am afraid of what people would say, but because I know what people would do. Some truths must remain in silence to survive. Some lives must remain hidden to remain free. She gave me her trust, and I will carry that trust with me for the rest of my days. And if one day, long after I am gone, someone else stands at the edge of these same Ohio woods and feels that quiet presence watching from the trees, I hope they choose compassion. I hope they choose patience. I hope they choose understanding instead of fear. Because somewhere in those forests, beyond the reach of human noise and human certainty, her family still walks beneath the trees. Still living. Still remembering. Still trusting. And maybe, just maybe, still watching over the human who once saved one of their own.